What is up, guys? Well, it is now the final month of 2025, and so it's time to take a look back at the previous month that was November of 2025 and talk about all the brand new release films that I saw, of which I have 15 this month. Now, November and December, this is the time of year where I get ready to do a lot of my voting for the critics associations that I'm in, so I get a ton of for your consideration screenings, so we're going to have a lot more movies to talk about in the tail end of the year, as well as a lot more movies that are typically more the prestige, more Oscar awards driven type films that we don't see as much earlier on. And because of that, this is a list that is very positive heavy. There's really only 2 films on this list that I would say I didn't like whatsoever. The rest of them, there are some that I genuinely love at the top. The rest of them are all movies that are well made, but just varying degrees of whether they're my thing or not. And also with that, there is a couple of films on this list that don't technically release wide until next month, or don't go to their respective streaming services until next month, but I want to tell you guys about them now, because otherwise you won't be hearing about them until the tail end of 2025, and then it might be too late for you to check them out. So with that being said, let's kick this bitch off. All 15 films I saw in November of 2025. Coming in at 15 for me is easily going to be Keeper. This is the new Osgood Perkins film, and you know, this is not a film that I hated. I think I gave it like a 2 out of 5 or whatever, but I certainly did not enjoy it. Now, Osgood Perkins is a guy that seems to be a little bit of a divisive rising voice in horror. Some people love him, some people don't like him at all, and then you got me where he's a little hit or miss. And with this one, I found it to be pretty much a complete miss. I think that Tatiana Maslany is great in this. I think it's shot really well. It shows a lot of his talents as a director and the variety that he can bring to the horror genre, which is really nice. And there are some creepy moments, some elements that I did enjoy, but it's a movie that is so deliberately slow burn that doesn't really ultimately lead to anything that rewards you for your patience in the entire runtime of the film. I'm fine with a slow burn film as long as it rewards me, and this one just left you with more questions than you entered the film with. There was a number of things about it that I felt were even kind of predictable that made it not really worth the journey, and it's a film that just felt like a lot of ideas without any actual effort into how to like really establish them and weave them into what you're saying on screen. Ultimately, it becomes a film that I felt like it was message first by the end of it. You know, this is a film that he did not write. He actually commissioned a Canadian writer, and this was kind of just like a side project that he did while he was making The Monkey, because the SAG-AFTRA strikes shut everything down. And so he was able to continue working with Canadian actors, Canadian writers, because they were outside of the US. And so this was like a little side project just to give people work while the strikes were going on. And I feel like that shows. I feel like it shows that it's a movie that was did not have its best foot forward, and it was not given the time it needed to really develop into the best version of itself. So I was really bored with this one and very frustrated by the end of it. I can't see myself ever rewatching it. Number 14 is Die My Love. This is the new film by Lynn Ramsey, who did We Need to Talk About Kevin and You're Not Really There, or whatever the movie with Joaquin Phoenix was. A director that I think is talented, but hasn't really made a movie that has really resonated or worked for me. And we can add this one to the list. This is yet another film, which we've gotten a lot of here lately. We got another one on this list that's basically about, you know, postpartum depression, or the struggles and the difficulties and the stress of motherhood and parenthood. And so you have Jennifer Lawrence here as a brand new mom to an infant, and her husband is Robert Pattinson. And they move off to this little secluded home in like Montana. And the whole movie is like this kind of fever dream exploration on the stress of motherhood and postpartum depression, where she just can't really figure out a way to be happy after her baby has been born. And, you know, I'm simplifying it, but that's essentially what the movie is. There's a lot of nudity. That was the main thing I kept hearing, was like, oh, Jennifer Lawrence is naked a lot in it. And she is. But it's a movie that I watched and I was just kind of puzzled the whole time. You know, obviously I'm not a mother, I'm a parent. I can have a similar experience in that regard, but I'm not somebody who gave birth to a kid or carried it for 9 months. So maybe there's a little disconnect there, just like it was when I watched Night Bitch last year. But it was a film that just felt very metaphorical, very surrealist, and, you know, great performances, and it's shot really well. I don't know exactly why it's in a square ratio. There's a lot of things in here that kind of felt pretentious to me, but well-made movie, sure. But I just don't know what the hell the story is. I don't know what they're trying to say here. I don't know what everything means. Night Bitch had Amy Adams walking around acting like a dog. You got this one, and Jennifer Adams is walking around, or Jennifer Lawrence is walking around acting like a cat and like roaming in the backyard and stuff. And it's one of those films that I could absolutely see certain people, certain crowds devouring this and loving it and thinking it's so powerful and strong and so potent. And I watch it and I go, okay, I I don't get it. Not for me. Number 13 is actually a film I should have included last month, but I didn't realize that it was released right at the tail end of October, and that is Hallow Road. This is a film that I saw at South by Southwest earlier this year. It stars Matthew Rhys and Rosamund Pike, and essentially what the movie is, it's like a psychological horror thriller where you have these two parents that get a call from their daughter in the middle of the night saying that she has struck somebody with her vehicle out on Hallow Road, and she needs them to come and help her. And so the whole movie is essentially these two actors of this mom and dad in a car driving to their daughter. And it's a series of these conversations that they're having, not only with each other, but the progressively more sinister calls that they get from their daughter. So it's a very isolated environment, kind of a bottle horror film, or thriller rather. And I really enjoyed that. And I thought that it was really good at steadily building tension and building intrigue, but I didn't really enjoy where the movie ultimately landed. I didn't enjoy where things went in the last 15 to 20 minutes. There's some things that happen that really start to ramp up like the supernatural edge to what's going on, which to me just kind of muddied the waters with what was actually being built. And I didn't really enjoy the actual narrative point that we were leading to with this journey. So I know I'm being very vague, but I don't want to spoil it because a lot of people I know really did enjoy this film. There was a couple people I was with, a couple of my friends at South by, that this was their favorite or one of their favorites of the festival. So check it out. But for me, yeah, it was like the destination was not quite worth the journey on this one. Number 12, we have If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. And this is yet again one of those movies that's kind of in that subcategory with Night Bitch and Die My Love, with Rose Byrne playing a mother that is just like absolutely crumbling underneath the stress of parenthood. And essentially she has a daughter that has an eating disorder and will not eat on her own. And so she has that as a thing where she's trying to like get her daughter to a certain weight so she can have a procedure that can essentially save her life or, make her life a lot easier. The fact that her husband is gone, he's like in the Navy and is never there. They have something pretty catastrophic happen like structurally with their house, so they have to move into an apartment. It's one of those movies that's like slowly ratcheting up how miserable and how stressful this woman's life is. And so it's a very effective movie at what it's trying to do, which is to stress you the fuck out and make you anxious as all hell, where every single moment it feels like something's getting worse and there's just more stress, there's more anxiety, there's more turmoil on the shoulders of this woman. And Rose Byrne is incredible. Would not be surprised at all if she gets nominated for Best Actress, maybe even win. I need to look at like who gets nominated, but she's very good. However, it's one of those movies that, it's not like it's made for you to enjoy it, but on some level you should enjoy the experience of a movie, even if it's meant to stress you out. And to me, this was a film that just exhausted the fuck out of me to watch, which again, by design, it's effective, but I just don't really like those experiences as much. So I actually had to watch this in 2 sittings because I watched it last night super late, just wanted to put it on to kind of continue to check off my CCA list. And this is one where I got about 45 minutes into it and I was like, I got to do something else. I don't need this experience at 1 o'clock in the morning. So then I watched the rest of it today, and even that was kind of hard to get through. So this is a film that, much like Die My Love and Night Bitch, I could see people watching it and going, oh my God, this is powerful. This speaks to me as a mother. I certainly have had parental stress that I can identify with the tale in this movie much more so than Night Bitch and Die My Love. And that's why I have it higher. But yeah, it stressed you out to the point where it was kind of hard to watch. And so not going to make it super high on my list, but very well made. Number 11 is going to be Rental Family. This is a film with Brendan Fraser that I went out to go check out the same day as Wake Up Dead Man, I believe. It was earlier on in the afternoon. But yeah, this is a film where essentially Brendan Fraser works for this company that I guess is a thing out in Japan, where they're actors who are hired out and lent out to portray family members or do certain things. It's like people for hire. Or like family members for hire, I guess I should say. Everybody's people for hire. But it sounded like a really intriguing premise that could really tug on the heartstrings, and it does. Now, the way that the movie is designed is that for the first half or more, you, along with Brendan Fraser, are not really that comfortable with the situation. Like, for the two main plot lines that are going on is there's this aged and dying actor who they hire him to pretend to be like a journalist who's writing something to chronicle this guy's life and career when actually nobody really cares. And then the other one is that you have this single mom with this young daughter who is supposed to be trying to apply to get into this very prestigious private school. And she wants Brendan Fraser to pretend to be her biological father the first time that she ever meets him, to try to guide her to get what she needs mentally to score well and get into this school. And so you look at both of those situations and all you see are the absolutely catastrophic ways that this is going to go wrong. And Brendan Fraser, as the main character, feels the same way, where he's like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I know this is a job. I know this is something I can do to, freshen up my acting skills, but this feels wrong. And obviously, the back half of the film is trying its best to show the good that comes out of that, show the things that are positive that comes out of these lies. And I don't think the back half of the film succeeded in that as much for me. I still left the film feeling very uncomfortable and very grim about certain things, especially the young girl that loved him and, thinks this is my father. And then, of course, inevitably has to find out that it's not. And so it is a well-made film that does have that heartwarming nature to it. It is going to tug on your heartstrings. I could see a number of people feeling like the second half redeems the first half in the way that it's intended to be much better than I did. This is something that I would watch again. It's a very interesting story, and Brendan Fraser is very good in it. He's perfectly cast for a role like this, for that kind of warm personality that he seems to give as a person. I was hoping to walk out feeling very heartwarmed and go, oh man, I can't wait to watch this. And it just makes me feel better. It makes me feel better as a person. And I'm like, I'm happier walking out of the theater now. And there was still a lot of that rawness, that raw emotion that was left where I'm like, man, I don't know if that movie made me feel better or not. Number 10, we have Wicked for Good. So if you guys remember back to last year, like I'm not a musical person whatsoever. I'm not a Wizard of Oz person. And I thought Wicked was good. The first one. I wasn't nuts about it, but I was like, for somebody that this is absolutely not my thing, this is a well done film. The songs are pretty good. The story's interesting. But my main hang up was I don't really know what they're going to do in this back half. Like, they set up so many things that feel like now I'm frustrated that I have to wait. Why did they decide to make this 2 movies aside from money? And a number of those concerns did come to fruition with this film. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the first one. Now, I still had an overall good time with it. I still overall liked where most of the story beats and character things ended in this one. I think the songs were okay. None of them stood out like a couple of the ones in the first film. Some of it probably is just that I enjoyed going to see this with my girls and my wife. We did the same thing for the first one. Sometimes that experience can shave off some of the rough edges, where if I watch this by myself, it might be a few spots lower. But the weird thing with Wicked for Good is that I see why they thought they could structure this as 2 different films, but it feels like all the meaty stuff is in the first film, and this is all just like the leftover, we need to wrap everything up elements of the plot. And there's just nothing that the movie can really stand on its own with in that way. And it kind of has the problem, which a few rare films have, where it feels like it's long and drawn out to make a feature-length film out of half of a story that's not meant to be the second half, while also feeling like a lot of the major plot points are just skipped over and fast-forwarded through. Like, it's a 2-hour and 20-minute film, but it feels like some things are going on too long and other things should be let breathe a little bit more. And so it was a very odd experience. And I don't know like exactly what the best version of, like, it's one of those things where I think even the source material, people always say the second half is not as good as the first half, as the first half of Wicked the play. So maybe it's just a source material issue, kind of like with it. But I feel like there was a way to take the best elements of Wicked and the best elements of Wicked for Good and just have a 3-hour movie that covers everything, and that probably would have been the best version of this. I don't think separating the two and making Wicked for Good its own experience did it any favors. So it's a movie that pales in comparison to the first one. Still, overall, I thought it was fine, and I was satisfied enough with how they wrapped everything up narratively by the end of it. I thought it was interesting. Number 9, we have Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out story, or a Knives Out tale, or whatever the hell they're calling it. Knives Out 3, essentially. And this one, I gotta admit, I was a little disappointed in. Now, I still thought it was solid. I still think if you're a Knives Out fan, you'll overall be happy with this one. And I've seen a lot of people be much more positive on this one. So I think with a set of movies that are good and that people like, it's really just going to be a matter of taste on which setting, which set of characters, which tone you like of these 3 films. For me, this is easily the weakest of the 3 Knives Out films so far. So this one is a lot darker. It's got more of a religious edge to it. There's, more of a both visually and tonally dark edge to the murder mystery that is going on here and the set of characters. And I would have assumed that would make me like it more, but I actually think I prefer the more kind of aloof tone of the first 2, the more comedic tone of the first 2 versus how dark this one got. So maybe that's the main difference here. But I also just didn't find myself getting nearly as invested in the actual mystery, or more so the set of characters here. Like, there's some standouts, like you have Josh Brolin here as the character that is the one who is killed. Of course, Daniel Craig is awesome yet again as this character. He's the star of the show no matter what these 3 movies you're watching, and he continues to be the strongest part of it, I would say. Josh O'Connor is a big standout here. We saw him in Challengers last year, and he was really good in that one. He's even better here. He's kind of your main protagonist aside from Daniel Craig's character, Benoit Blanc. But other than that, the assembling cast around them, maybe aside from like Glenn Close, who I thought was really good as well, they're just not as memorable. And you got people like Jeremy Renner, you got Kerry Washington, Mila Kunis in here. So there's a lot of recognizable names. I just didn't find their characters to stand out near as much as the multitude of characters that were standouts in the first one and in the second one. I also found the overall answers, like when you get to the third act and Benoit Blanc puts it all together for you, I didn't find it to be as surprising or as interesting of an unraveled mystery as the first 2. So I don't know, this one's kind of difficult to review because my entire collection of thoughts on it is really just comparing it to the other 2, which is hard to escape when you're in a movie trilogy like this. But yeah, if you're a Knives Out fan, it comes to Netflix on December 12th. They did like a limited release. It might still be in theaters near you if you want to check it out in theaters. I would say just walk in with some modest expectations, and maybe you'll enjoy this one more than I did. Maybe it'll be your favorite of the 3, but I just prefer the tone and the approach of the previous 2 to some of the more darker direction we got here, but still a solid little murder mystery. Number 8 is a film called Jay Kelly. Now, this is going to be coming to Netflix on December 5th, but it does have like a limited theatrical release right now, I believe. And this is Adam Sandler as well as George Clooney being the titular character, where he's this big movie star, like a Cary Grant type character, and Adam Sandler is his manager. And essentially, he's having like a bit of a life crisis where something happens that puts his life into perspective and makes him feel like, even though he's one of the biggest movie stars, most successful movie stars of all time, maybe his life isn't the way it turned out, the way that he wanted it to be. So it's kind of like a human reflection type film where you got somebody that has, like, money-wise, resources-wise, everything he could ever dream of, but all of the personal relationships around him and missed relationships is suddenly what he's looking at as regrets. Not having a stronger relationship with his daughters, not having more of a friend relationship with his manager in Adam Sandler and looking at him more as an employee, not having, some of the respect of some of his old peers as much as jealousy and resentment. And I thought overall what it was exploring, it did a really good job with. It's not a movie that hits like these emotional highs as something that I would have hoped that it would. It's not a movie that necessarily has like these tear-jerking moments that I would say is like, give that person the award for that one. George Clooney's very good. Adam Sandler is very good as well. This is a movie that I like to see more out of Adam Sandler nowadays than his comedic stuff. Like, this is infinitely better than Happy Gilmore 2. But this is just like a good little Sunday afternoon, fireplace type movie. You put it on, you get a really good human story out of it. You get some emotions and some little mild chuckles and laughs out of it. It's a solid watch, so keep an eye out for it at Netflix December 5th. Coming at number 7 is Christy. Now, this is a movie that everybody on film Twitter was talking about, but it was all essentially just like people sending the signal flares out that this is the end of Sydney Sweeney's career. Like, the amount of people and how passionately that they have turned on her since that fucking American Eagle ad is just... That is a perfect example of how ridiculous the internet has made people, in my opinion. But nonetheless, this is not a review on Sydney Sweeney. Christy is a film that I would have told you was going to be a bomb. Like, women's boxing is not a subject that a lot of people have a ton of interest in, whether that's right or fair or not. And even though you have somebody, Christy Martin here, which this movie is based on, that was like one of the greats in women's boxing, I've never heard of her. And I think a lot of people have never heard of her. So it's a tough sell to have a movie in today's movie climate where movie stars aren't selling movies anymore. And so even if Sydney Sweeney was the biggest actress in the world, she's not going to sell any movie just because she's in it. And the other selling point is a women's boxing movie based on somebody that a lot of people have not have heard of. So did not shock me at all. This thing was an absolute box office disaster. It should have never went to a wide theater release. So I didn't really know what to expect when I watched it. And I'm here to tell you, it's really unfortunate that this movie's entire discourse was surrounding all of the hatred towards Sydney Sweeney here recently and everything like that, because the movie's actually really good. You know, this is what a biopic should do, which is tell you a story of somebody that maybe you've never heard of or don't know very much about and absolutely captivate you with their story. Now, the first half or so didn't really get me as much. It was very much a traditional, like, you know, rising star of a sport type story. But the back half of the movie is really where this thing shines. And I didn't know anything about Christy Martin's life and the attempted murder and her relationship with her psychotic husband and everything. And when that becomes the main point of the story, this fucking thing is riveting. And you've got Ben Foster in here playing her whack job husband. And like all great Ben Foster psycho roles, he is incredible at playing a fucking creep. I think Sydney Sweeney is great in this. You know, for all of people's thoughts on her, which a lot of them I think are ridiculous, she is a very talented actress. Like, she is absolutely somebody who is embracing and totally selling herself off of the sex angle. And, you know, not many people do that nowadays aside from pop stars. So that's kind of interesting to watch, where she's just like, yeah, my tits are out. Fuck it. That's what you want to see. But she's not just resting her entire career on the period of time that she's viewed as being the hot current it chick, because that's going to last a very short amount of time, as any actress will tell you. She's actually doing some really interesting things with her career as an actress as well as a producer. You know, she did fucking Madam Web just to get some good studio clout so that she could do Immaculate. And she was very good in Immaculate. And now you have this movie that is her kind of playing the opposite of what most people would want her to play. She's not playing the hot girl. She's not playing even somebody who's portrayed to be like even traditionally attractive. Like, there's so many elements of Christy Martin in this era that is like almost the ugly side of 90s fashion. And she's portraying a character that she has to embody somebody totally different than herself. So I think she is very good in this. And so this is one that, you know, I would say if you don't like sports biopics, it's probably not going to do a whole lot for you, but there's a lot more meat on the bone for this one than just like a rising boxing star of women's boxing. It's all the husband and wife drama and the psycho shit that happens in that section of her life that made this a really fucking wild movie to watch. So I would say ignore all the film Twitter bullshit. And if you're interested in it, seek it out and check it out, because it's actually really good. Coming at number 6, we've got Edgar Wright's The Running Man, and it's a shame. I like this movie a lot. It's pretty high on the list, but like I said in my review, if the third act was as good as the first two acts, this would probably be maybe number 1 or number 2. But this is a film that, you know, I've never been as crazy of a fan of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie as a lot of people, and that's coming from a massive Schwarzenegger fan. So to me, I always had confidence this was going to be a remake that was going to be better than that first adaptation for me. And even though it's got flaws, it is a movie that I enjoyed a lot more. I like Glenn Powell. I really do like Edgar Wright. You know, some of the British comedy edge stuff in his more popular films never really lands for me, but as a director, I think he's got an amazing style. I love Baby Driver. So this is a film that has a really cool premise. that's portrayed in a very different way than the previous iteration, the previous adaptation of the novel, that I think is a more interesting iteration of this story. Glenn Powell is very good as your leading man here. There's a lot of really solid action sequences and chase sequences. It's got a great pace to it. Unfortunately, the flaws with the film are two pretty sizable things. One of which is that the third act doesn't necessarily fall off a cliff, but it's easily the weakest act of the film. Like, as soon as you get to this point where he's on this highway and he gets into this car with this woman and takes her hostage, it's like everything that happens after that didn't really land for me. It wasn't as exciting, it wasn't as cool or as tension filled as previous things. And so it just kind of felt like the movie peters out for the last 30 minutes. And strangely, this is a film made by a filmmaker whose style runs rampant in every single one of his movies, except this one. This is the least Edgar Wright film that Edgar Wright has ever made. And it's not even like the Running Man concept doesn't lend itself to his typical style. I think it fits perfectly. So I don't know why he chose to do that. I don't know if it was him trying to like contain himself a little bit more and have more of a Stephen King look to it. Or I don't know if it was the studio saying, hey man, everybody loves you, but your movies don't really kill at the box office. So maybe taper down the more goofy style that you have and make a more straightforward movie. I don't know what the direction was, but it was a little frustrating and a little disappointing, even as a casual Edgar Wright fan, to see that wasn't he wasn't all over this movie. So I enjoyed The Running Man. I thought it was solid. I look forward to checking it out again, but it fell quite a bit short of what I was hoping and what the first 2/3 of the movie led me to believe it was going to be. Now we've reached the top 5, and I loved every single one of these movies. So no matter which of these you're interested in checking out, you're not going to go wrong. Number 5 for me was Zootopia 2. Now, I loved the first Zootopia. I'm not somebody who gets overly excited about animated films, even though there's a lot of good ones, and I see a number of good ones every single year. But Zootopia was one of the last times that I watched an animated film in theaters with my family, and I think I loved it even more than my kids. Just something about the humor of that movie and all the references and the way that they balanced appealing to kids and appealing to adults with certain like double speak and innuendos. I thought the movie was awesome. And strangely, it has taken like 9 years, something like that, to get this sequel. And so I was very excited to go check this one out. And while I haven't seen the original in a recent enough time to tell you which one I liked more, I thought this one was pretty damn close. I really did enjoy this. I enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the voice acting. I thought that Ke Huy Quan being as this snake was really charming. And, it has somewhat of a template of the first film, much like with like the Knives Out movies where there's like a certain skeleton to it. But there's a lot of different elements here that I thought were fun. And I liked seeing the relationship kind of blossom and change and have some tension between Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde. And the animation was great. And so, yeah, this was one that, we went, I think it was just me and my wife and my daughter went to go check out. And we had a great time with it. And I look forward to buying this one and watching it again. I had a really good time with Zootopia 2. Number 4 is going to be Eternity. Now, this is a film that I was certainly intrigued by, but this is one that my wife knew about and she really wanted to check it out. So I was very happy when I saw that it was added to my little for your consideration list and I was able to watch it at home. And this is a really well done little romantic dramedy. This is absolutely like a chick flick, but it's not a movie that you can't enjoy or you'll struggle to enjoy as a guy. It's got a really interesting premise where you have Elizabeth Olsen and Miles Teller, who you meet them at the beginning of the movie. They're an old couple. They're towards the end of their life. Miles Teller's character dies and goes to this afterlife, which is essentially portrayed to be like a train station where they have all these different afterlives, all these different eternities. Like, do you believe in heaven? You can go to heaven. Do you want to go to the beach for the rest of eternity? You can go there. Do you want to go to a fucking Mets game? Like, it's like that type of fictional version of the afterlife. And shortly after, Elizabeth Olsen shows up because she has since died. But the little bit of a difficulty is that she had a previous marriage that he knows about, and it was to a man who died very early on in their relationship at war. And he has been waiting for her in this little terminal station for like 67 years. So essentially the movie is about Elizabeth Olsen choosing what her eternity is going to be. Is she going to spend her eternity with the man that she's already had a whole lifetime and a whole life and a whole, fairy tale story with, had kids, grew old together? Or is she going to spend eternity with the man that she loved before that was deprived of all of that? And I think it's a really interesting premise that has a certain amount of sweetness to it while also having obviously some drama to it. And is not something that is like this easy to understand situation. And I really liked how the movie played all of it out. And, I'm somebody who I'm a second husband. My wife was previously married before we met. And so there were certain elements of this story that I was very much ready to be pissed off by, where I'm like, the certain ways this movie can go is really going to frustrate the fuck out of me. But I was very surprised with even the uncomfortable moments in the film where, like Miles Teller and this first husband actually start to bond a little bit. The way that they portrayed it was really just about like the base emotions of love and, sacrifice and, recognizing certain things about what means the most to you. So I really did enjoy this one. This is one that if it became like a regular kind of watch with my wife or whatever, I would enjoy rewatching this one very easily. So if you have a significant other especially, check this one out. It's still in theaters. So go out. It's a nice little holiday season comfort movie for couples. So I enjoyed Eternity quite a bit. Coming at number 3, we've got SISU Road to Revenge. This is a film that I saw at Fantastic Fest, and this was one of the most kick-ass experiences I've had at any film festival. This was a perfect film to watch with a festival crowd. Now, the first SISU I thought was solid. I wasn't as crazy about it as even a number of people that I know, but I thought it was solid. It's something that was like born out of this new version of action hero since like John Wick, where it's like one badass dude with a set of skills who can just fuck up entire rooms of people. Only it's Nazis that he's fucking up. So even more of a reason for you to enjoy the carnage that comes along with it. So SISU Road to Revenge was one where I was like, okay, that'll be a fun little palate cleanser for like the more dark, depressing films we see at this film festival, but I'm sure I'll feel pretty much the same as I did about the first movie. I think this was leaps and bounds better than the first film. I think that the action is bigger scale. I think that it's executed better. I think there's a lot more fun to be had with some of the carnage and the comedy that comes along with it. I think the character's motivation has a little bit more of a personal edge to it in this one that just kind of hit a little harder for me. And even the way that he's portrayed as a silent protagonist kind of felt like appropriate in this movie more so than like a gimmick. And so there was so much about this one, even having Stephen Lang as the villain. I love him as a villain. He's always awesome. This was a fucking ride, man. And so this is a movie that I thought was an awesome theatrical experience. It made me want to go back and rewatch the first film again. And I can't wait to own this one because this is one that I'll definitely be rewatching quite a bit at home. So if you like action revenge movies with a lot of bloody, bullets and broken bones and things like that, this is the movie for you. It was fucking awesome. Coming in at number 2 for me is a pretty big surprise this year, and that is Predator Badlands. Now, I'm a big Predator fan. There's very few of them, even the Alien versus Predator films, that I hate. Even the bad ones I still can kind of get some guilty pleasure out of. But there was something about this one as a concept of, let's do a PG-13 movie that's like an action film where the Predator is actually the protagonist, that sounded like it could go either way. It could be something really fun that I enjoy, or it could feel like it loses the plot entirely, and I'm immediately going to call the red flag and go, no, he needs to go back to being a villain. Don't fucking do this again. And I honestly thought the latter was more likely to be what was going to happen when I saw this one. And I was shocked at how much I enjoyed the living shit out of Predator Badlands. Now, there still comes a caveat with that. I don't want this to be the template for Predator movies going forward, and I do have some fear that, Disney, Fox, whoever you want to call the people that own this property right now, are going to learn the wrong lessons, because this has since become the highest grossing Predator film of all time. And it's one of the highest rated Predator films of all time. I think we would totally benefit from getting a sequel to this, but I don't want Predators to be the heroes going forward. I don't want this to do what Terminator did after Terminator 2, where suddenly it's all about Arnold Schwarzenegger being the hero, and it's never dark or horror themed, or even like, it feels like a soft rated R after that. I don't want that to happen to Predator. But with that in mind, I love this movie. I had a blast with it. It does definitely have some templated elements to it that feel kind of like modern blockbuster, more so Disney modern blockbuster, but I think they do it well, where even those more Disney-fied moments, and for me, there was only a few of them, they didn't stop the movie dead in its tracks for me. I thought the lead character Deck was really cool as a protagonist. I liked his relationship with Elle Fanning, who is the synthetic. I liked the elements of the movie where he has to, like a video game, take on these multiple bosses and figure out the weak points, and kind of has to, loses all of his weapons in the beginning like you do in most video games, and has to kind of rebuild his arsenal throughout the movie, leading up to this big epic boss battle. I loved the video game influence that was all over this film. And so I really got into this. I thought the action was great. It was exciting. It was fast paced. And it was enjoyable, and it didn't feel like it was watered down, even though it was PG-13, because essentially the only difference is that it's not human blood, which sounds stupid, but that is the reality with the MPAA. If it's green blood and purple blood and alien blood, you can tear spines out and rib cages and do whatever you want and still get a PG-13. But we see a drop of red blood, you're getting slapped with an R rating. It's stupid. But my point is that with all of the carnage you get in this towards all these different alien creatures and monsters that he's fighting, it doesn't feel like a soft Predator film. There's just no human skulls and blood. So yeah, this is one of the biggest surprises of the year. This is one that I could see myself rewatching probably more so than any other film that I've seen this year. This is just my type of film that I would throw on in the background or throw on just to kind of casually have a good time with. So I absolutely loved it. I just hope that this doesn't kill Predator movies going forward, because then retroactively I might be less of a fan of it. But coming in at number 1, talk about surprises and shocks. We've got Marty Supreme. Now, this does not go wide until December 25th. There were some preview screenings that happened very recently. I watched a screener at home, and I have to be honest with you. This is one of those times where you learn not to judge a book by its cover. Because I looked at Marty Supreme and I thought, okay, so it's Timothée Chalamet yet again trying desperately to get a Best Actor Oscar, and it's a fucking ping pong movie. And it's one half of the Safdie brothers. This movie sounds like it's going to win all the awards and bore the fuck out of me. Shame on me, because this movie's insane. Like, everything that I thought that it was is absolutely true, but in the best possible way. Like, this is Timothée Chalamet's best performance, but he's playing a total scumbag. And so it's a very different type of role to see from him. And yes, it's about ping pong, but it's not just about like an underdog story about a guy trying to make his way to the ping pong championship or something like that. Like, that's kind of the inciting incident, and he's trying to get back to the championship. And it's about all the crazy, wild shit that happens to him on his journey to getting back to that championship. And so it is very much the uncut gems version of what I thought it was going to be, but I like this a lot more than Uncut Gems. The Safdie brothers kind of had a little bit of a breakup. I don't know if they're getting back together or not, but they made Good Time and Uncut Gems, 2 films that I enjoyed quite a bit. But you had Benny Safdie earlier this year that was the villain in Happy Gilmore 2, which is easily in my bottom 5 of the year. And he made The Smashing Machine, which I did not really like all that much. And now you watch this film, and this is Josh Safdie, his brother. And after watching Marty Supreme, I'm wondering if maybe all the elements that I really loved about Uncut Gems and Good Time was more a Josh Safdie thing than a Benny Safdie thing. But I don't know. Maybe that's unfair. We'll see how that cookie crumbles in the future. But this movie was a wild fucking ride that I loved every single minute of. It's got tons of great performances. I do think that Timothée Chalamet is pretty much a lock at this point. I think this is his year. And you know what? For being somebody so young and so hungry for it, I hope he gets it, because this movie deserves it. I think it's wonderfully shot. It's got the best score of the entire year. It's a very interesting, like almost borderline Trent Reznor kind of score, like not quite as industrial as his style, but very much in that way of how his scores kind of complement a lot of David Fincher's films. It felt kind of like that here. So I really enjoyed the music. You got tons of great side characters and the actors that are portraying them. The biggest surprise being Kevin O'Leary. Mr. Wonderful himself from Shark Tank was in here, and I was like, okay, well, he's going to play a rich scumbag. That's not that big of a stretch. That's the character that he plays on the show, but he's really fucking good here at being kind of a dickhead. So I'd be shocked and kind of laugh in a good way if he got a Best Supporting Actor nod. So yeah, this is a movie that, despite feeling like it was going to be one of those Oscar bait type of prestige films that I was going to be annoyed having to sit through, I absolutely loved it. And it's one of my favorite films of the year so far. So as of right now, like as far as films that actually have a shot to win a lot of awards, Best Picture, Best Actor, things like that, this is very much a front runner for me so far. So what I'll say is, if you are not immediately sold by a film that is going to get a lot of Oscar nominations and is going to be hailed as Timothée Chalamet's best performance yet, if you like films like Good Time and Uncut Gems, where it's like this ratcheting tension of a character making so many bad decisions and taking one step forward and two steps back and just sitting there and just getting overwhelmed with the amount of anxiety that is built with this situation. If you like those types of movies, this is absolutely one you need to check out. It was one of the biggest surprises of the month and certainly one of the biggest surprises of the year for me so far, and is my #1 film of November 2025. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2025 new release reviews. I'm also going to put a playlist of all of my other month wrap-up videos up to this point for you to catch up on. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.